Snipers, you have to see what's happening with the cryptocurrency market today as Bitcoin is still consolidating inside of the symmetrical triangle, but there is a very big puzzle piece on the table that I want to talk about, because when we look at what's happening to the Bitcoin price on the weekly chart, notice here how we came down below home base at this 20-week moving average, and this candle came fully below the 20-week moving average. But when we look at what's happening right now to the total cryptocurrency market cap, notice how this weekly candle is very different than how Bitcoin played out at the 20-week moving average at home base, where it now has reclaimed this 20-week moving average at that $1.6 trillion level. Does that mean that we're going to potentially see altcoins outperform Bitcoin and a potential decoupling effect? Because as an umpire, when you look at a chart and you're holding onto home base and another chart is showing the complete opposite, where the Bitcoin price went completely below the 20-week moving average. Notice how this second candle never even had a chance to get to home base. That is a bearish sign for Bitcoin, but the total cryptocurrency market cap chart is showing a whole different scenario. So this is going to be an extremely interesting video, because I'm going to talk about the correlations of the traditional markets alongside with commodities like precious metals and Bitcoin, and also most importantly talk about altcoins in the total cryptocurrency market cap chart. Because when we look at what's happening to others' dominance, notice how we are maintaining ourselves inside of this pocket between this 50-day moving average and this 100-day moving average, and we're above the monthly and weekly open right now, showing strength to the upside. And when we look at home base for others' dominance, we are so far and above home base, and it's now reclaimed this multi-year resistance level that will now turn into support. With any worst case scenario, we have this 20-week moving average here sitting there for others' dominance. To me, it looks like the picture is showing that altcoins are still going to perform in Q3 into Q4. And I know that goes against a lot of analyst opinions saying altcoin season is over, Bitcoin is going to come back up in dominance. Well, Bitcoin dominance has yet to form any further highs, and it looks like it wants to continue now below this 50-day moving average, and we are so far and below home base that I think it would be irrational as an analyst to say that there is even a potential of a rescue operation at this point until we can see this 20-week moving average and home base come back into the equation. In my opinion, it looks like something very interesting is happening in the cryptocurrency market, and there's a lot of correlations with other markets. We're going to cover all of that today. You guys are watching the Snipers channel. My name is Naeem Al-Abeidi. We hit 444 likes on our last video the last time I checked. Thank you all so much. I couldn't do this without you. I appreciate each and every one of you, Snipers. First, I want to talk about exactly what's happening to Bitcoin, because we are seeing this potential decoupling effect right now with the total cryptocurrency market chart and what's happening to Bitcoin. We have to be honest and say that Bitcoin has been below this 200-day moving average for quite some time now, having a cup of coffee, but we've yet to form any further lows beyond what we saw here on the 23rd of May with this candle low here, right around that $32,000 level. And so for me, at this opinion, my opinion hasn't changed about Bitcoin. If we have yet to see any sort of a breakdown of this market structural symmetrical triangle, then I assume that we could still potentially see a breakout towards the 50-day moving average, right around that $50,000 big even, based on the schematics of the symmetrical triangle. And that's if Bitcoin does not break this market structure and come below 33,000. But really at this point, we want to stay above 35,000. You guys know how important this $35,000 level is. It's really going to be 34,800. There's confluence at the previous weekly open and a major structural resistance level. You can see the bodies of these candles have held this level, and we have yet to see full bodies below 35,000 on the daily chart. We don't want to see that if we want to assume continued upside for Bitcoin. But I'm not going to treat the total cryptocurrency market cap chart anymore as I treat Bitcoin, because they're showing different pictures, and we have to isolate the two charts and talk about what's happening in the overall picture as an umpire with an unbiased opinion. And so for Bitcoin, if we can get above 38,000, once again, that's the confirmation I believe we can see 50,000 again, because that puts us above the monthly open, the weekly open, and the major structural resistance, and it breaks out from the symmetrical triangle. So 38,000 is a confirmation for Bitcoin to see 50,000, but until and if we see that breakout, we have to monitor that $35,000 level, because if we start to trend back down towards this major support, that breakdown could be violent. And so we'll continue to monitor what's happening to the Bitcoin price. We look at the 4-hour chart. I do want to address the Ichimoku cloud because we've been watching this. It's still acting as resistance. You can see the Ichimoku cloud rejecting the Bitcoin price right now, heading down. The further we get towards the apex of the symmetrical triangle, we typically want to see a breakout at 70% towards the apex. And so we are starting to overextend inside of this triangle. I don't want to see a continued overextension here, because as we start to approach the apex of this, it gets weaker and weaker and weaker, and the likelihood of this breaking down becomes a lot higher. We want to see this breakout towards 70% of this. And so that's what we're watching here for the Bitcoin symmetrical triangle. But let's talk about Ethereum, and then we'll cover the big elephant in the room, which is altcoins, the total cryptocurrency market cap chart, showing a whole different picture than Bitcoin. With Ethereum, you can see we're really just fighting this channel support. And as long as we stay around this area where this channel has been a fair market value for Ethereum, once again, I believe that it's going to be the stronger asset. We're not seeing too many bearish signs for altcoins. You can see here with the Ethereum to Bitcoin chart, notice how we are maintaining 65,000 Satoshis. It looks very healthy so far, and it even looks like we can potentially start coming up and forming new highs here, potentially towards that target here of 86,000 Satoshis. As long as we're above 65,000 Satoshis, I believe Ethereum will be the stronger asset. I don't believe there'll be a downside scenario as long as we're above 65,000 Satoshis. And when we look at the Ethereum to US dollar price, as long as we're above this weekly open here at 2,400, I think that that's a positive sign here that we could still see continuation of upside. We just don't want to get back below 2,000 at this point, because that starts opening the doors down to that 1,760 area, and really that previous all-time high I don't believe will come back into the equation for any time, because once you break an all-time high and you step into price discovery, in the past we've seen with crypto assets that they don't come back to the previous all-time high. So I don't expect 1440 to come back into the equation. I think 1760 or inside of this pocket would be the worst case scenario we can see if we see a breakdown in the overall market. But I do want to just throw out a random thought and opinion, and that's going to be, are altcoins going to decouple away from Bitcoin? Because we're seeing something very interesting right now with this total cryptocurrency market cap chart, with the first candle coming below this 20-week moving average. Already within the first 2 days of the week, we've reclaimed this level. And that's a very different picture to how Bitcoin treated home base and this 20-week moving average, because with Bitcoin, none of these candles after the initial breakdown was able to reclaim this level. We came straight down. So that is a puzzle piece on the table. If we come above $1.6 trillion in total cryptocurrency market cap chart, I think I'm going to start looking away from the Bitcoin chart and focusing on this, because this could assume that if we get back above home base, there's going to be continued upside in the overall market, or at least a consolidation period where Bitcoin may not perform as well as some other altcoins. And so let's monitor this. You guys all know that I love the fundamentally sound altcoins, but this is a puzzle piece on the table. The total cryptocurrency market cap chart is acting very different than Bitcoin at home base. And so the other's dominance doesn't look bad. In my opinion, we're above all major levels. We are just below the 50-day moving average, cooling off a little bit, and it's a much needed cool off after the extreme rally we saw with altcoins since the start of this year. So nothing to be worried about when we're entering Q3 and we're seeing a little bit of a relief rally here. But I don't know why people are saying altcoin season is over when Bitcoin dominance is yet to show any signs of a recovery. And so let's just keep that on the table. Traditional markets have opened, of course, after this extended week, and gold still showing strength. Not much action happening in traditional markets, interestingly enough, which is actually a good thing, I think, for the crypto market, because it's such a volatile market that when other assets like oil, for example, you can see forming this higher high right now, not necessarily coming into a transitionary phase, just staying within a present pattern. Anytime you start to see that type of calmness in the traditional markets, like when you look at the DXY right now, we're just still inside of this channel. That creates a very healthy environment for the cryptocurrency market to see continued price discovery, because it's such an early asset class. So I almost look like, I look at the cryptocurrency market as an asset that is in the most extreme phase of price discovery right now. When we look at other traditional assets like commodities, like precious metals, I think cryptocurrencies are in the biggest growth pile, if that makes any sense. And so due to that, I believe that seeing calmness with the DXY, for example, allows for the cryptocurrency market to continue into price discovery and to see more capital flow in from outside institutions, because they're less focused on outside market volatility, because they know markets are not as volatile anymore. And so I personally like not seeing volatile traditional markets. I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. You'll also enter into a giveaway. S&P 500 still trying to decide whether it wants to form a higher high, a lower high, potentially continue into further highs. We'll continue to monitor this, of course. And then the gold to Bitcoin chart, we're going to monitor this potential cup and handle formation that's forming here. And so if this starts to break out, we know the storyline on Bloomberg is starting to change. They're saying that Bitcoin's an NFT now, not a storage of value, because of the energy consumption and all of these different things, and the fact that it dropped 50%, and that's not a storage of value after it went up 400%, right? So they don't know what they're talking about. It's not going to come down to 20,000, in my opinion, and test a previous all-time high after breaking an all-time high and going into price discovery already. There was no cycle that we came back down to a previous all-time high. So I know my video yesterday was a little bit hard on the Bloomberg analyst, but for us to come back down here to 20,000, I don't know if that's going to be the case. There's no cycle in which Bitcoin has come back down to a previous all-time high after testing a new all-time high. I think the worst case scenario at this point with Bitcoin is if we start to see the downside scenario play out. It's almost like a hurricane, right? Like, I had a lot of time in Florida, and you would watch the Weather Channel and they would cover hurricanes, right? So if this was a hurricane and I was a weatherman and telling you what I'm looking at here and what the trajectory or the potential damage this hurricane can do is, if it does break down to the downside here, let's say we do break 33,000. I think that the worst we could see is a wick to 23,795. I think anything below the midpoint of this range between 24,000 and 35,000, I think anything in this area below would be very solid dollar cost averaging opportunities in the overall market if Bitcoin does start to break down, because that would obviously pull some altcoins down, but that doesn't mean the rebound isn't going to be a lot stronger with altcoins, as we've seen throughout this altcoin season. And so I think this lower end of this channel, I think that's the worst case we could see here. If this was a category 5 and we start to break 33,000, right? Because we're approaching the apex of this. There could be a breakout here very soon, or a breakdown. I think the worst would see is a wick down to 23,795. I don't think we're going to come down into this channel. If we do, I think we would certainly not come down to 19,800, the previous all-time high. I think there's going to be some sort of a fake out, some sort of a trap here. They've already cleared the longs here with this wick coming down to 30,000. And so it wouldn't be too bad for them to come down just a little bit further. Who knows? That's worst case scenario, category 5, right? Let's say that the Atlantic winds start shifting the hurricane out of nowhere and we start to see this come out and break out, right? In my opinion, I stand by that $38,000 level at this point. We're coming so close to show confluence with the resistance of the symmetrical triangle and that $38,000 level that, as your weatherman, I would say that, hey, if we get above 38,000 hourly and 4-hour confirmations, that's going to be a potential no-brainer there with a breakout to the 50-day moving average for a retest there. And that would be about a 30% upside potential. We come up based on the schematics of that symmetrical triangle. We test this level. I think that would be the scenario if the Atlantic winds come in and they shift this bearish sentiment. And yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this content, and I do want to pick a winner for Principles by Ray Dalio, one of my favorite books on value investing. If you want to win this book, comment below and share this video. I'll pick a winner from our video yesterday, and we'll wrap up this video. Let's see here. We'll pick Relax. He says, stick with the fundamentals and you'll always come on top. Send me a message on Instagram. You want a book. If you want to win a book, comment below, share this video, and I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Thank you so much for hitting over 400 likes on our video yesterday. 444. What a lucky number for me to stumble upon when checking the likes on that video. So thank you all so much. I couldn't do this without you. And until next time, snipers out.